This is Greg Troutwine with Marine Technology Reporter TV, and we're here today with Shepard Smith, recently named Chief Technology Officer of XOcean. Shep, to start, I know that you're no stranger to the audience for marine technology news, but can you give us a brief overview of your responsibilities and your experience over the course of your 28-year-plus career at NOAA?
Thank you, Greg. I'm pleased to be here. My 28 years with NOAA, I was with the Commissioned Officer Corps part of NOAA. I started off as an ensign in the hydrographic program assigned to the NOAA ship Rainier up in Alaska. And we surveyed using survey launches and single beam echo sounders and the brand new technology of GPS, some of the completely unexplored areas of the coast of Alaska. I went from there to about 10 or 15 years of a very technology focused part of my career with NOAA, working on integrating new technology, bringing in GIS and multi-beam and database-based systems in through gridded bathymetry to speed up our workflows. And then I started getting into the charting side. I was the chief of our charting division. So working on the products themselves, the nautical charts, which is a whole nother world of integrating shoreline information and all kinds of dodgy information, not just these pristine hydrographic surveys, but a lot of information from different sources and getting that out to mariners on a global basis weekly. And so we made some huge improvements there. I finished my career as the director of the Office of Coast Survey and the U.S. National Hydrographer, which is a pretty cool little title. But I really, some of my most memorable times were the 10 years that I spent at sea. I spent 4 years as the commanding officer of the NOAA ship Thomas Jefferson, involved in a number of different projects. Some of them started out hydrographic and ended up being more interesting down at Deepwater Horizon, or some search and rescue operations that were pretty neat. But throughout it all, I was really driving toward bringing new technology to bear to improve the science and art of hydrography at sea.
When you look at the business of ocean exploration from the time you started your career to today, what technologies do you count as to have the single biggest influence on studying the oceans more efficiently, more safely, and why?
Well, I think, I'm going to date myself a little bit by saying that GPS was not even widely available when I first started. And so we take it for granted now that we can position our sensors accurately enough. And that used to be the biggest difficulty and frankly, the biggest barrier to entry for people who could otherwise be helping with observations at sea. It's only been in really recent times where you can readily combine an echo sounder and a GPS unit and get the first cut of bathymetry from almost any platform. Clearly for multi-beam work and more careful work, backscatter and everything else, it goes up in complexity from there. But that really has opened the doors to a much broader participation from a wide variety of players, and as well as the crowdsourced bathymetry market. So as far as the exploration side, I'll really focus a little more on the mapping side of exploration, which is really usually the first cut. You sort of see what's generally there, and then you start doing additional sampling or ROV work or AUV work on particular features of interest. And I do want to sort of look at it from the point of view of a really interesting interagency process that I was involved with toward the end of my time with NOAA, along with Dr. Alan Leonardi. He and I chaired what was called the National Ocean Mapping, Exploration, and Characterization Council, and this was a high-level administration-led project to integrate ocean mapping and exploration programs across the government, and get a really big goal of getting of mapping and exploring all the U.S. waters. So we started from the ground up and just sort of said, well, what do we already have? And certainly sharing what we already have is the easiest way of getting that done. And then once we've sort of started to see the end of that, we looked at the level of effort that it would take to map all U.S. waters. And as you and your listeners know, your viewers know, the deeper water for sort of surface level multi-beam scales resolutions goes a lot faster than the shallower water. The coverage is proportional to depth. So when you get into less than 40 or 50 meters of water, the pace slows down a whole lot. So we looked at what it would take, how much was unmapped to modern standards, and how much what would it take to get that done. And we said, well, we really have, for 200 meters and deeper, we have the technology we need, ship-based, crewed ship-based multi-beams. It's just a question of doing it. We can do it pretty efficiently. We just need to get coordinated and get it done. When you get into 250 meters and shallower, the level of effort just goes through the roof. And we declined to even publish what we thought it would cost, given current technology, because it wouldn't have made it through the vetting process within the government, right? You can't say numbers like that. And so instead we said, well, we redefined success. We said, well, we're going to have that, we can get the deeper water done with current technology, but we really need to lean in on improving the technology to get the shallower water mapped more efficiently. So I spent a lot of time, and we spent a lot of time thinking about what that technology would look like. And lo and behold, really what it looks like is kind of where I have now landed, where uncrewed systems can operate around the clock, often in conditions and with endurances that crewed vessels cannot, and can be operated remotely it's sort of much more efficiently with a tiny fraction of the environmental footprint. So really, the piece of work that I left undone at NOAA was really, how can we get this done efficiently? And so that's really been one of my missions here at XOcean, is to try to solve problems like that.
You obviously have had a long career that included time at sea, that, as you mentioned. Is there one trip, one discovery, one event that sticks out above all else that's most memorable, special, or perhaps even frightening?
Boy, well, I think memorable, special, and frightening, maybe those would all be different sea stories. But I think I just want to go back to, it's probably over the course of a year, when we installed multi-beams for the first time on our boats. And we could now see the things that the divers, I was a diver, that the divers knew were there, that the geologists knew were there, but you really just you never could actually see them. We could see sand wave patterns that were indicative of processes in coastal areas. We could see sediment changes that were indicative of habitat changes. And it was just like this whole new world had opened up to us, where we said, well, we could use that we could use this for that, we could use this for that, we could do all these different things now that we've gotten over this hurdle. It happened again to me when I was working on the Deepwater Horizon oil spill, where we spent a lot of time looking for evidence of the oil spill in the water column. We were trying to estimate the flow rates, but also looking at the effect on the ecosystem. So we were looking for anomalies within the water column. Well, I was a seabed hydrographer. I always did all my work by getting rid of all the noise in the water column. But when we turned it and when we tuned our sonars to begin to really look at what sort of signals we could get from the water column, it reminded me of that era where we looked at the seabed for the first time. Now we can see what's in the water column, and we could see oceanographic features like the interface between the freshwater and the saltwater. We could see the big migrations of all the critters, going up and down every day. And you could tell I'm not a biologist; I just call them critters. But we could see evidence of changes in the flow based really on the critters that we could, so we could get some evidence of where we thought the submerged oil was going based on some of these other background layers. But it really opened up my mind to, whole new ways of studying the ocean with, through being able to see through the results of those two different sensors.
Well, I'm originally from Ohio, so critters happens to be one of my favorite words. So we're all good there. So Shep, obviously you were recently announced as the new CTO for XOcean. What specifically attracted you to this position with this company at this time?
Well, I mentioned the focus on being able to efficiently map shallower waters, faster and cheaper in order to be able to open up new applications, right? If it costs X thousands of dollars a day to do this work, but you can only sort of justify the value at X over 2, then it'll just never get done. But if we can bring the cost of mapping down, it's not just that we can do the same work cheaper, it's that there will be more work that's worthwhile doing. And this was really an insight that came out of that NOMEC work as well, is that there's a lot of demand for this that's not quite worth doing, but would be really valuable at a different price point. So that was one sort of focus. And the other was really, I spent a lot of time hiking, and we're going to talk about that later, but and thinking about what I wanted to do with the next phase of my career, and I wanted to do something important that would have an impact on the earth. And there were really two crises that I focused on, and one of them was the climate crisis. And clearly, we need to spend a great deal of effort, decarbonizing the maritime sector. I joined the National Academy of Sciences Marine Board. This is a big focus of ours on there as well. And I thought that the platform that XOcean had already developed had the potential to really revolutionize the way we do science at sea. And we're not the only ones. I'm a big fan of a lot of the uncrewed systems manufacturers and operators in the world. But those classes of vessels really will be able to change the way we do science at sea, which is critically important to understanding the Earth system and to managing species and everything else. But we can't do it at the cost of further, carbon contributions to the atmosphere. I estimate I spent about 10 years at sea. We used maybe 1,000 gallons of fuel a day on one of our ships, and on average, and about 100 days a year sea, say. So this is all one order of magnitude stuff, and I think it's 4 pounds per. Of carbon per gallon. And so that it comes out to 40 million. 40 million pounds of carbon were emitted from the ships I was on. It would take about 2,000 years for XOcean's entire fleet to emit that much. So we've had this huge step. We sometimes get asked, can we go from very little to zero? And we're certainly looking at that. But the difference between a lot and very little is a huge step. And I don't think we should, lose sight of that. But anyway, those were really the two main reasons that I was attracted to XOcean.
XOcean is certainly no stranger to this audience, premised on some conversations with leadership that I've had previously. But for those not in the know, can you give us a broad or a brief overview of the company and the technologies that it offers?
Sure. So XOcean designs, builds, and operates a fleet of uncrewed surface vessels for a variety of science applications, science and engineering applications at sea. We deliver the data, so we don't sell our boats. We have only one customer for our boats, and that's ourselves. And then we then contract with somebody to do work, to provide the platform and the sensors to be able to allow them to collect their data. A lot of it has been seabed mapping, multi-beam and sub-bottom profiling, a little bit of fisheries work, a little bit of some really interesting applications too. for instance, data retrieval, getting data off of seabed sensors. Data, that's called different things all over the place, but essentially going in and being the surface expression for, for one of these seabed observatories, getting the data off and then getting it out to the world, because you can't, otherwise the data just stays there on the seabed. And so we can do that very efficiently with these uncrewed vessels. So, some of the benefits, there's no personnel offshore. We have no problem hiring as many super qualified people as we want right now. We have many applications for every one of our positions, particularly offshore folks. There's loads of people that have a lot of offshore experience that for one reason or another, they don't find that going offshore again works with their lives anymore. Maybe they're young parents, maybe they have aging parents, maybe they have health issues. Maybe they just want to spend some more time with their families, or do a better job with their rock band or whatever it is. There's a huge lifestyle benefit, and so we're able to recruit hydrographers and pilots, surveyors and pilots to come work for us. Our equipment is really great, so people, the engineers are really excited about it. Anyway, because we don't have to put those people offshore, they're not in danger. The expense, the sort of hoteling that is really a lot of the complexity of crewed ships is really that all of that goes away. As we talked about, there's low environmental impact, and not just the carbon, but we're no discharge by design, right? We can operate for as long as we want inside no discharge zones. This is a real problem for the research fleet, particularly in parts of the United States. So, we have about 40,000 operational hours so far. We've learned a lot in those 40,000 hours, and this is really all of those lessons learned have plowed back into our technology and back into our operations, so that this isn't a new company anymore. We have a lot of operations and a lot of talent, and a lot of that experience baked into what we do. Operate over the horizon without our need of a mothership. We can deploy from a normal boat ramp, and we fuel at a service station, usually using the road fuel because it's way cleaner than the marine fuel. Our survey system is all cloud-based. All of our processing is in the cloud. We don't own a single server anywhere, and so our surveyors can be working around the clock. We can put a lot of people on a project to get it done quickly, and use all the benefits of cloud resource.
Obviously, the job is still relatively new to you, but stepping into the job day one, can you discuss what your priorities would be for the coming 12 to 24 months?
Yeah, so we're a fast-growing company. We're building a new boat a month right now, and we expect demand to be increasing such that we'll need to do that more or less indefinitely. And so there's a production side of this that we have refined down really well, but there's more to do there. I think it's about the other parts of the expansion are more interesting, where we work from sort of a narrower set of capabilities. When people see us work, or see one of these boats at a show, they're like, "Oh, I wonder, could you do this?" Right? And it's like this special thing that they do, right? That they need done. And we say, "What? Yeah, we probably could, but it would need, this kind of modifications, this kind of power, this kind of communications." So we need to sort of work out all those. So there's a lot of that sort of integration that we're doing to ensure that we can meet the most demand that we can from our clients. We're looking at some global expansion as well. So right now we do most of our construction and maintenance in Greenore in Ireland. in the Republic of Ireland, just north of Dublin. But if we start to have a significant fleet distributed around the world, it doesn't, even if we can fly it back to Greenore, we want to be able to do the oil changes locally and that sort of thing. So we and the upgrades and replacements, generators and that kind of thing. So we're working on putting together a quality controlled global maintenance and maintenance system that goes with a global fleet.
Shep, we've discussed, we look at the maritime, the offshore energy and subsea sector, and throughout those three, we talk about autonomy daily. I mean, you can't get away with it. You talk about decarbonization, you talk about autonomy. So when you look at autonomous technology in the generic, what do you reckon is the next step to make true autonomy at sea more mainstream?
Yeah, well, I hope I never described our vessels as autonomous, because we don't typically describe them that way. We talked about them as uncrewed, and there's a spectrum from completely remotely monitored all the way to different levels of autonomy going further up. And we're still pretty far on the remotely monitored. Although we're constantly building in better awareness into the boat for its own surroundings, and developing really a huge database of what all these different conditions look like, so that we can have a training set for machine learning, artificial intelligence that we can use to bring the automation further and further into the system. We're never gonna take a person out of the loop. You don't need to for a system with constant satellite communications. But we do want to, we recognize that every step of automation helps even in the crewed systems, much less the remotely uncrewed systems. And so we're working with a lot of partners in the survey industry as well on how to make the systems run better with fewer operator interactions. And on the survey side, and clearly it's collision avoidance, situational awareness on the vessel side. But where it's really interesting is where those things come into where they need to be coordinated, right? How do you drive the boat so that you have the most efficient line plan for getting survey work done? The most area with the fewest miles and the greatest density, and consistently of data across the area. And so there's some really interesting optimization opportunities that we're working on there. As far as I think that the idea of autonomous ships has sort of spooked the regulators a little bit. I think that has matured a lot. That conversation has matured a lot in the last few years as more, systems like ours become mainstream, and the world didn't end, right? Bad things still happen at sea, whether there's people on there or not, and we figure out how to manage those things, and people get gradually more used to it. I think it is really interesting though, as we, there's no IMO regulations for uncrewed systems, so there's no global framework. So the jurisdictions, every jurisdiction we work in has sort of different idea on how this should be done. What are the what sort of safety considerations should be involved, and it's been really interesting as we pick that apart. If we look at the historic regulations for safety at sea, they're mostly about the safety of the seafarers. They're not usually about the and the environment, right? It's the seafarers and the environment. That's what we're trying to protect.
So Shep, I'll assume that you've had a long career, and I'm sure along the way there have been many that have helped you and or been influential. Can you discuss who you consider to be your most influential mentor or mentors and why?
Yeah, I'm gonna call out one guy who is gonna be it's gonna be hard for me because he passed away last year. So Rick Brennan was like a professional brother to me. He and I were more or less the same sort of seniority coming up all the way through NOAA, and he and I we had this way of clicking and thinking about things that enabled that shorthand technology, shorthand communication, right? That we could know how each other were reacting to a situation, without any real verbal clues, right? But Rick had these talents, particularly with people, that I learned from. I never was the master with people, have been the master with people that Rick was. But Rick could take a vision and inspire people with it. And there's a lot of people that can take a vision and go into the back room and tinker with gears and write code and stuff and get something close to it. And those people are also really critical to making this happen. But if you want to take a vision and make it a big vision, you need a lot of people working on it, and they need to be working on it from a lot of different ways. And Rick could really do this. So Rick and I, through a variety of things, we sometimes worked alongside each other. Sometimes one of us worked for the other, and none of that really mattered. We just had different roles that we were playing through the organization. But he had set up some really visionary ways of integrating the ocean mapping program at NOAA, not only across NOAA, so that the work we were doing for safety and navigation could also work for habitat and fisheries, but also outside of NOAA, so that we could do joint projects with the USGS and with BOEM, and be able to really learn from each other and do joint projects and really take this vision to reality of getting this done. Rick himself had so many mentees. I'm honored to claim that for myself as well. But there were dozens and dozens and dozens of people that he would keep regular touch with. Not just what are you doing, but how are you doing? In a way that was not just hiya, right? But like, really, how are you doing? And so anyway, shout out to Rick.
That's spectacular. Absolutely spectacular. So, Shep, you've been very kind with your time. I just have one more question. And for the final question, I want to take us out of the water and into the mountains. Understand that you recently took some time to hike the 2,000-mile plus Appalachian Trail. Can you share insights on the experience, why you decided to make the trek, what you got out of it, and what you learned about yourself along the way?
Yeah, well, that's a whole nother podcast. I left a week after I retired from NOAA, and started in Harpers Ferry, West Virginia, which is about the halfway point, and went hike north from there up to Mount Katahdin in Maine, and then flipped back down to Harpers Ferry and finished southbound. And if you sort of think about the the Northern Hemisphere seasons, leaving in April, from the mid-Atlantic and heading north, I just followed the spring all the way up. I was in shorts the whole way, and then I flipped back down, and I followed the fall all the way down into the south. And so it was a nice time of year to do it. Plus, there weren't as many people doing it the way I did. But it just became it's sort of a whole lifestyle. Sort of homeless by choice. Don't have a lot of the amenities of life. I got very attached to my tent and had a ritual for it, but over time, my already pretty light 30-pound pack, after successive climbing enough mountains with it, you really take a harder look at, do I really need this? I haven't used it in a week. I think I could probably get by without it, and kept dropping that weight and kept simplifying, and I think that process was really valuable to really think about what's important. But it was also kind of fun. I was kind of a big deal at NOAA, and I had a lot of people working for me, and I was a little bit of a public figure within my own little world, and it was sort of, once I got onto the trail, I didn't have any of that, right? So it was sort of fun to sort of start over, so who am I within this world? And that was a fun sort of learning experience. So I am a recovering scientist, and so I did a little project along the way where I recorded a sound clip every hour at the top of the hour, a 15-second time sound clip, which then I analyzed for the different frequency components and that sort of thing, and then mapped it all up in a GIS with the help of some great folks with those types of skills, and that was a really neat opportunity. Every hour, just stop and listen and think. Right, you're not striving for anything. You just have to observe for that 15 seconds, and that was a nice sort of ritual that I had as well. But I'd highly recommend it. There are people out there of all ages, and really well integrated. The 60-year-olds were hanging out with the 22-year-olds, and it kind of just, it was just everybody doing this thing, and a very supportive environment. So I'd certainly would recommend it to anyone if you can sneak away for 6 months.
Good advice for society in general today. That's for sure. And as far as emptying the backpack and finding what's necessary and what's not, sounds like also good skills for your new CTO position. So that's right. Or Shep, I truly do appreciate your time, and I look forward to visiting with you again once you had a little more time under your belt at XOcean.
Good. All right. Look forward to it. Thanks very much.